Today's episode is brought to you by our company, NanoChomp Marketing Strategy and Analytics. We help product and marketing teams solve problems and experience growth using data and approachable AI. Visit nanochomp.com to learn more. Today on Soundbites, we have Nancy Diautolo. Nancy is a serial entrepreneur and a founder of YDM, which stands for Your Digital Marketer. She helps companies expand their marketing capabilities with content creation, digital marketing, web design, and strategy execution. Nancy wanted to be a writer, and she takes us through how one conversation with a teacher changed the entire trajectory of her life. She's still an amazing storyteller, just directed through a different medium. Nancy talks about growing up before the internet, the phases of marketing from pre-internet through post-internet and digital transformations, building her businesses, finding and managing resources as a solopreneur, and how AI is changing the world, just like the internet changed the world not so long ago. Here's Nancy's story. Hey everyone, thank you for joining this week's episode of Soundbites. Today we have a really great guest, Nancy Diautolo. Nancy is founder of YDM, which stands for Your Digital Marketer, that helps companies expand their marketing capabilities, create content, create digital content strategies, web design, and execute those strategies. So thanks for joining us, Nancy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, excited to have you here, and we're really excited to hear your story. So let's start with where it all started. Like, what got you into this path that got you down to create YDM? Like, where was a starting point for you?
Oh, wow. It's a pretty zigzaggy path, to be honest with you. As a kid, I was, super introverted, but really creative. So I was an avid reader. Books were my friends, which was less pathetic than that sounds. And I always had stories running in my head. I was super curious about people. And so growing up, I thought, I'm going to be a writer when I grow up because I really enjoy telling people stories and all of those kinds of things. So, this is back in the early 90s when I was in high school and, talking to people about, degrees and, college and all that. And so when I told them I was going to be a writer, their immediate response was like, cool. Like, what's going to be your real job? Like, how are you going to actually make money? So, I was a little confused, and I happened to have a really great teacher who she was my typing teacher turned computer teacher, because they were like just bringing computers into schools at that time. And she said, you really have a knack for this. You should maybe look into going, into business because this is the future. So, based on that, singular piece of advice, I went to school for business and was introduced to marketing, as part of that program. And so I think my first class was like the psychology of the consumer or something like that. And it was
Hmm.
so interesting because I love that, right? It talked about, generational nuances and things like that. So it was super, super interesting. And then once we got into the advertising part, I was like, okay, this is it, right? Writing, design, psychology of people. Like, this is how I take my creativity and turn it into a big girl job. So, I graduated with a business degree, minor in marketing, and it was pretty traditional after that, right? I started working I like working for small companies because I felt like I made more of an impact. And I think that experience is what prepared me the most for what I do now because, small companies have no budget at all, ever.
Yeah.
You have to be, strategically creative, but then also execute everything, right? Because you have a team of maybe one or two people. So I
Mhm.
learned how to do everything as it was coming, into play, all that technology, and I can execute en masse at scale, leanly. Um, so yeah, I mean, the solopreneur, which is what I'm doing now, was never really at the forefront of my mind. It kind of evolved, right, as I did, because I got married, I had kids, and so I took some time out of this career. And then I wanted to get back into marketing, and I found it very difficult to try to get back in. I managed to do it, and it was with a phenomenal company, small company, department of one, like all my wheelhouse.
Mhm.
But the salary was humbling, to say the least. It was actually less
Yeah.
than what I was making my first job out of school. So
Wow.
I just kind of opened back up to my network and was like, hey, I'm back. If anyone needs help with anything, let me know. And, I set my prices low, to try to get business quickly. And it worked, and I found that I loved it. People often say, niche down. I'm never doing that because for me, the thrill is working in different industries and figuring out the nuance of how to market to different audiences. I mean, that is just so interesting to me. So I kept doing the freelance on the side, kept, doing that until I just, took a chance on me and just went full on solopreneur. And that brought me here. It's been several years. So
That's awesome. And I think like what's really interesting is you wanted to be a writer, and when you met that one teacher that took that knowledge, took that creativity, took that energy, and then kind of focused the laser and said, hey, you can do that. But if you do it in this application, here are the doors that can open for you. And that kind of changed the trajectory of where you were going to go, right?
my whole life, right? Just that one, and it was very off the cuff, right? I don't even think she meant it to be such a life-changing thing. It's just crazy how life can be so serendipitous. So, shout out to Mrs. Martell. I don't even think she knows the impact that she's had. I should really reach out to her and try to find her and tell her that. But yeah, it was just a great opportunity that she presented to me.
Lauren and I talk about this quite a bit. We recognize that there are probably 5 words that strung together change more lives than anyone realizes at the time. And for us, it's want to get something to eat, like
Yeah.
want to get some food, something like that. Like those words typically change somebody's lives in ways they would never imagine at the time. And it sounds like in your situation, it's like, have you considered business? Like, have
Yeah.
you considered this? Like that one sentence completely altered the course of where you were going, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
you went to college, went into marketing, and what was that experience like for you? You mentioned you had, typing classes, computers just coming into school. So
Yeah.
the college experience was probably like right on the cusp of that millennial Gen X transition, right?
Yes. And the internet was a thing when I graduated, but not in high school, right? I think CERN put it when I graduated college, but not in high school. So I think CERN put it on the public domain in like '93 or something. I could be wrong, but around that time. So when I got out and started working, the internet was really new, and marketing. I'll talk about data since that's what you guys really specialize in. Like data is the lifeblood of marketing, obviously. And prior to the internet, it was very siloed and expensive, right? You had people that handled financial data, and people that handled consumer data. People were buying lists and things like that. So this internet, once we figured out how to use it, right? Because I don't think people talk about that.
Yeah.
We used to have to research like macro to micro, right? Like the Dewey Decimal System encyclopedias, like you went to the broad and then narrowed it down, which you can imagine, doing that in a search engine, you would just not get any of the results that you were looking for. So, it's interesting when I think back to my colleagues and like, we're like, this internet, this World Wide Web, it's crap, like nobody's ever going to use this. It's only good for chat. So once we figured out that, it was extremely useful and we had all the data information that we could need at our fingertips for free, it changed the game completely. And for those first few years, it was like the wild, wild west, right? I mean, we could get a website to rank in 10 minutes because first of all, you didn't have as many people having websites, and the search engines didn't have very strict algorithms, and it was just unbelievable. And I would say maybe like 4 or 5 years in, like the paywall started to go up and people realized, oh, I can monetize my content, and all of this wasn't free anymore. But for that small period of time, it was just incredible. And in retrospect, looking back to how much it didn't just change the way we do business or market, it changed how we do life, right? Like my kids just cannot fathom the fact that I did not grow up with the internet. And we're seeing it happen now with AI, right? And so like I'm living through this amazing, life-changing, altering thing, not just for marketing and business, but for life, with AI. And so it's I have the foresight now because of what I lived through with the internet, but AI is going to change the way that we do life in ways that I don't think we can even comprehend. And from a marketing and data perspective, it's so exciting. So there's been lots of transitions, lots of challenges. I feel really lucky to have had to learn all this stuff from the ground up. Interesting perspective. Even though I'm old, I've got a lot in there.
I think you've been through a lot, which is interesting. And speaking of transitions, you mentioned sort of leaving the workforce, starting a family, then getting back into marketing. You said that was a hard transition. Was it What made it really challenging to sort of get back in? Was it that like a lot of stuff had changed, or like folks giving you a chance, or what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a combination of those two things. I mean, first, it's never
Mm,
good to have a huge gap
yeah.
on your resume, and two, I was afraid. A lot had happened in between that time that I left and came back, and so
Mm,
self confidence was definitely part of it. But marketing is like it's in you, right? A marketer, like when I watch infomercials for fun, right? And I'm constantly like looking at people and new generations. Like this is all just genuinely interesting to me. Like what makes people tick and all of that stuff. And so that never left. And so I think when I would get an interview, and actually be able to get in and talk to somebody, they could feel that. They could see like, listen, maybe she needs to brush up on some things, but the passion's there, the talent's there, the skill is there. And I just kept at it. Like when I get something in
mm.
my head, I'm going to do it. So yeah, I think it was just a combination of having the gap and, coupled with my own, insecurities that I had to get through. So I was really lucky. I mean, the company I ended up getting back with was great. And so I'm super grateful to them and fortunate for that link back into it because it led me here.
And I think we had Scott Tinkoff. He runs strategy at a company called Iterate, and when we were talking about a very similar question, it's like, what's changed over that life cycle, right? Like, and he's like, everything and nothing, right? At the end of the day, marketing is still taking a message, delivering a message to an audience, and the only thing that really changes is the medium in which you do it. And it's like, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess at the end of the day, you're really working at making a message that's going to resonate with the end customer. What we have today that you might not have had you know years back is significantly faster cycles to know if something's working
Yes.
Mhm.
within a couple of hours versus like, oh well, this is a 6-month campaign, we'll see what it says.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, let's run this for the weekend and see what we get.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I say that all the time. Like marketing, the fundamentals never ever change, right? You've got your product or service, and then the group of people that product or service will service or will help, right? And marketing is the bridge between those things. So not only do the tools change, right, with which you can reach said audience, but um, the audience themselves change, right? Generations
Mhm.
change, right? What worked in the 90s, like when I was coming up, like celebrities, whatever the celebrities were doing, the common people wanted to do, right? And then in the 2000s, YouTube really started taking off. And so you had regular everyday people becoming influencers, like doing their makeup and having these big followings. And so you had like the micro influencer, the macro influencer, all of those things. And now today you've got Gen Z who's like, don't talk to me. Don't even have a celebrity try to sell me anything. You're completely unrelatable. I want, straight out of the shower, belly rolls hanging out, authentic communication, and that's it. And I love that, right? I love that because marketing itself has gone through a huge evolution, right? Like I came back in, and then in the mid 2000s, I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, right? Because
Mm.
Mhm.
being a marketer kind of was its own persona. It got super flashy and the money, and everybody was just like cursing flagrantly, which I do on my personal time, but like in marketing was like the edgy thing, and I'm like, what? I don't fit. It's very like bro-tastic, and I say bro inclusive of men and women because both were doing it. I'm like, this is not. I can't be authentic as a marketer in this environment. But leave it to just people, right? The people that we do this right. Marketing is for the people to just bring it back, right? Into just straight authenticity and wanting, just the facts. I don't want anybody paid telling me that this product is good. I want to see it for myself. And so it kind of came back into its own, and I'm loving that right now. I'm absolutely loving the direction that that's going in. Raw, real, no flash.
I'm trying to remember who said this. Maybe it was like Gary Vaynerchuk kind of thing, but I think he says that he's never romantic about the vehicle. It
Yeah.
because the marketing fundamentals, you go where the attention is, you go where the people are. And if people, okay, let's say people move away from Facebook, or like your audience moves away from Facebook, okay, go to TikTok. When they move away from TikTok, go to the next thing. You
Yeah.
can't be loyal and romantic about the channel. It's just, understanding the marketing principles and then following
Yes.
folks there.
Yeah, serving
Um,
the people, absolutely. And
yeah.
Gary, like he changed the game, right? I think he actually started that whole trend because we were like, who is this
Mm,
guy in a beanie and Converse sneakers and just, you know, FFF, whatever. But it was authentic, right? That was him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it resonated. And I know I was like a moth to a flame. Like, look at this guy is really making waves. And he was really good. I mean, I don't know him. He just has no idea who I am. So I'm just fangirling at the moment, but he really has a great way of like looking at trends, you know, and seeing like this is where the
Yes.
people are going. So yeah, the vehicles are going to change all the time. They're going to change 100 more times before I retire, even, right? If I ever do. But yeah, you have to serve the people. Wherever they live is where you need to go. Exactly.
And something else that interested me about what you said, it's like, you know, people tell you to niche and like find, you know, do your one thing really well. But I would say like you can do so many things just because you started in that small business environment. I started at a small agency where we were doing 15 different things. And I feel like that really helped me as well. So I understand that. What do you like doing the most? Because, you know, we've worked with you and, you know, with clients and you've done a million different things, but you know, when you sit down at the end of the day and you have to do a task, like what's your favorite thing to do?
I would say now I'm getting back a lot into one-to-one. There are a lot of
Mm.
people, not just entrepreneurs, but you know, sales executives and managers who want to start developing their personal brand. And
Mm.
while they're phenomenal in the craft that they're disciplined, they don't really know how to best communicate it, right? So it's not inauthentic, right? I'm not making up stories for people or creating brands, but I'm, you know, taking their message and their story and you know, pulling it into, you know, palatable pieces that will resonate with an audience. And so I'm really loving that. And I know, you know, the whole grow and scale and, you know, serve the masses, but I'm always been like more of a one-to-one, kind of a service provider. I feel like you can be super successful. I'm more successful than I've ever been working that way. And so I think that development of people owning their brand, regardless of, you know, what positions they hold, is going to continue to grow. And I'm loving that because, you know, we all do different things, but as humans, like, you know, we're very similar, you know, I mean, generations have nuances and things like that, but people are people, right? And in this
Yeah.
whole age of like authenticity, that we're coming into and just as a collective, it's been my honor, right, to take these stories and tell them, even though it's on a ghost basis, right? Because people don't know who I am. I'm just talking on their behalf. So I would say that's one of the favorite thing that I'm doing now.
And I think like back to the Gary Vaynerchuk comments, he would call like personal brand is basically reputation with a megaphone, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's
And you don't
where you've been.
control it. It's what other
Yeah.
people think of you, right? So you can try to control the narrative all you want, but
Yeah.
it's what everybody else thinks. So, you know, if you're not authentic, you're not going to be able to keep up a persona for very long. People will see right through that. So yeah.
In data science, you call that mean reversion.
Yeah.
You always revert back to the mean. You can come outside of it for a little while and you come back, but you'll settle back to the average or the mean. So you create YDM, you start working with a lot of brands, you're creating their content. But when we've worked with you on projects, not only are you creating their content and you're copywriting for them, you're delivering complete marketing experiences, right? Like your team's been redesigning web page, just reimagining everything that an end customer would touch. So walk us through that. Like, how did that start scaling as you were releasing or launching YDM and growing it?
You know, well, in the beginning, and I think, you know, this may be true for lots of, you know, solopreneurs or agency starters, or maybe it was just me. But, you know, in the beginning, I just did everything, like whatever I could do, right? Whatever anybody would hire me to do. And I started seeing that customers or my clients were getting very fragmented level services, right? Like they would be hired, they'd need somebody to do, you know, copywriting. And so they would hire a copywriter and just get somebody who copywrote something for them. But what they really needed was an end to end. What they really needed was somebody who understood that they didn't really know what they needed, right? So, you know, come to me and tell me what your end goal is, and then let me tell you how we can best get there from a marketing perspective. And so, and I honestly, to this day, think that that's the value in what I bring, right? Because I go head to head with big agencies that have huge staffs and, you know, big budgets that I don't have. But, you know, you get me, right? And I do have 1099 employees that work with me, but we've also been working together collectively for longer than 5 years. So
Mhm.
we all know each other well. We all have the same philosophy on how to work. And so, you know, it's individual for every client, like how to pull all those pieces together, like you were referencing. But, yeah, the difference is I don't put it on the client to tell me what they need. I ask them what their goals are. And then we put together the plan for them. And then, not only do we strategically, figure all that out, but then we execute, which I think is a super value add in today's industry, especially like with the Fiverr and Upwork, which I'm not
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. I found amazing talent on there myself, but you need to have that spec written, right? Like in stone and delivered. And how would you know, right? If you're an engineer, you're an architect, you don't really know, right? So yeah.
How do you deal with clients who, like, you said something that stuck out to me where it's like clients don't know what they need. Like that's really the crux of it a lot of times. How do you deal with clients who think they do know what they need?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as marketers, and you guys can probably relate to this too. Like, I think marketers are one of the professions where everybody thinks they know how to do it, right? Like,
Yes.
right
Yes.
from the beginning, they're like, oh, my nephew can do that, or hey, especially with social media, right? Like everybody's got a nephew
Yes.
who's really good at social media. So yeah, I had a lot of experience dealing with that, and I think it's just communicating effectively, right? Because you never want to come at the
Mm.
client. I would never say directly to a client, you don't know what you need, even though I'm on this recorded podcast saying that. It's more like, well, if this is your goal, this is what I think the best way is to get there. This is what I would do if it were me. And so, often it's positioning and communicating and doing all the things that we know how to do really well to convince, to persuade the client, like we persuade, consumers, to go down the right path. I mean, and sometimes, right, you end up with stubborn clients, right? It happens,
Yeah.
which is also a benefit, right? When you have your own business, that you can say, okay, I think, I'm probably not the best fit for you. And, maybe, hand them off to someone who would be better for them, or,
Yeah.
point them in a different direction. That happens rarely, but it does happen. So yeah, it's just, using the principles that we know how to do really well to persuade for the best end result, right? It's not even for us, right? It's just so that they can.
Right.
And I think one way we've softened it for people is some of it looks risky, especially like to your point. Some people think they know what they need to do. They think they understand marketing. They've watched a couple of YouTube videos. They're really smart in their field, so they think they're going to be smart in another field too. If there's a term for that. I forgot what it is. But when you transfer your skill from one place, like, oh, you're a good pilot, so you think you're also a good surgeon. Like those things are
Yeah,
actually not the same. But what we work with is, if you're not sure about something, let's test it. We can test it quickly, right? And we can get an answer. We don't have to guess if it's going to work or not. We can actually try it. And I think that's new for a lot of people, the really small test and iterate approach. And that really starts to empower end customers, because then they're like, oh, well, they start getting there. Oh, we can test that. So you don't have to anymore. And that's how we've been helping get around that problem in our world,
yeah,
because we saw the same thing, right? Like, trying to be a good shepherd, good steward for the client, but sometimes they have different ideas. So it's like, well, let's test this and see what's going to work most effectively.
yeah,
And man, that's like within the last probably 5 years that's been really, really a capability that you can actually do.
yeah.
Where
And
before that it was tough.
absolutely. Yeah, that's such a good point, because if you can show a client data, like the numbers, hey, this is what's working, yeah, then you've sold them completely. And that, like with AI coming on, like the data and testing and analytics on, I mean, you're getting real time information, and not only real time, but projections, right? That used to
Sure.
take a long time and were super expensive, that, they're just kind of spitting out. So I mean, still, refining and getting there, but yeah, I think it's going to be a much easier sell, because you're going to have a lot of data to back, and much more success rates, right? In shorter periods of time because of that technology. So that's
So,
exciting.
so through your marketing career, you've seen things move from like print and TV media,
Yeah.
radio, to the internet's born, to social media, to mobile media. But it's like 2007, the world kind of changed again when everything became Web 2.0, and then you had a smartphone, so all this stuff changes
Yeah.
again. And now you're seeing the genesis of generative AI, all these things that people are talking about it nonstop now. How are you leveraging that? How are you looking to leverage that? What does that look like for you? And how does that sound like opportunity in your world?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I've lived through so many iterations of this that I see there's nothing but opportunity, right? I mean, I've seen so many jobs, be created because of technology and then also become obsolete because of the same technology, throughout my career. Like, data entry was like the most important job. And now like it doesn't even exist anymore. So I'm never scared. I was scared like growing, like, throughout my career, like, oh, am I going to become obsolete? I'm not anymore, even with, the copywriting AI and all that stuff. And a lot of what I do is copy. Um, I know that there's always going to be the next thing that's going to be, created from this thing that either replaces a job or changes the way that it works. Yeah, and I've never shied away from tech. Like when something new came out, I was interested in learning about it. Right, as a marketer, I want to know how this works. And I think it's important, as you in any profession, it probably is important to do this, but especially in marketing. If you're worried, if you're hanging on to old ways, you're going to become obsolete. You're going to make yourself obsolete. So yeah, I'm diving headfirst into all this stuff, and I'm not afraid to like break anything of my own. And just, I'm not afraid to take that next step. I mean, I remember, creating websites early on in the 90s and 2000s. And the first time I was buying something online with my credit card, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to put my credit card number in this encrypted browser, and never like putting together that I would pay with checks with everything, right? That had like your full government name, address, banking institution, your bank account number, like, and it's your signature on a piece, just on paper, like in the wild, right? So, never put those two together. So I'm sure I'm going to have many more realizations of that as we advance. Like we used to do stuff so archaically. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about what's to come. I think my kids' futures and my grandchildren are going to live in a whole different world that I can't wait to be part of. So I don't ever want to be like, I know when I was coming up, it was like the CEO couldn't like, save something to a PDF.
Gosh, yeah.
And it was always easy. It was always like just save as and then check the PDF. It was never more complicated than that. So I don't ever want to be like that person ever. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep diving in and learning.
Speaking of like jumping in head first and trying new things, you run your own business. So you sort of wear every hat in an organization. What is it like being a solopreneur and being I don't know, like doing your own taxes and worrying about all the administrative stuff that nobody talks about when you run your own business? What was that like when you first started, and how has that evolved over time as you've built up this business?
Yeah. Well, when I first started, I was, the work I wasn't afraid of, but it was like the administrative stuff, like taxes. Like I like overpaid and screwed up everything in the beginning. And you don't really have the bandwidth or budgets, right, to like hire that stuff out. So you really are doing it all. But for me, there's a real freedom to having control over, your future, right? How you earn money, and how you make your mark in this world. Like nobody's telling me how to do that, right? And that's important to me, right? I work with the people that I want to work with. I deliver messages for products and services that I feel are worthwhile, and I'm incredibly grateful and blessed to have that opportunity. And doing the personal branding work that I'm doing now with clients, I see all the time people have 40 years in an organization and then get let go, or they invest their life savings into companies that they then are pushed out of, right? It's like catastrophic things that I think if we're taught more at a younger age, I mean, I know I didn't hear it growing up, in the 80s, have some ownership and autonomy over your future, that I didn't think it was possible, right? Even when I'm getting back into the workforce, I didn't think that, I'm going to be a solopreneur, I'm going to own my own business. Like it seems like this big, huge thing. I think that's changing. I know the message is changing with how I speak to my kids and all of that, like have more autonomy over what you're doing, because there is no safety net, right? Like, yes, you're going to work hard, but it's a different kind of work hard, right? Like if I put 12 hours in on a day on my business for my clients whom I love, right, and I have these super strong bonds with, it's a big difference than, working 12 hours for someone else, and, perhaps dealing with managers. And I mean, I was very fortunate. I had phenomenal mentors and managers throughout my career, but that's not always the case. So yeah, I mean, it went from being stressful to now, like I have somebody who does my taxes for me. It keeps me legal compliant and paying as less as possible. And, I can hire out. I have a VA who kind of helps, is my whole life, keeping myself together. But in the beginning, you just do it, right? I mean, and all of us have the capacity to do it because we do it anyway, right? Whether you're working for someone else or yourself, you're doing all the things anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a kind of a long-winded answer to that question.
No, it's really good though, and it's really important. And I think we've talked about this on our podcast before, but some people will think, oh, starting your own business is really risky, and it is. And they'll say, working for yourself is risky. There's all these other risks. But when you work for another company, all that risk is still there, but it's generally abstracted to you, right? Like you just don't see it because somebody else is managing, mitigating it, and keeping you on task.
Yeah.
So it's not any. I don't know if it's any more risky. It's just you have more visibility into it and you can mitigate it more effectively. And
Yeah.
I think that's difficult when you grow up in the 80s and 90s. It was, hey, you're going to go work for Ford, or you're going to work for GE, and then you're
Yeah.
going to stay there for 20 years, and then you're going to get a gold watch, and then
Yes. And a
you're going to have
pension and like you just keep climbing that ladder and yeah, it's great, especially for women, right? Like the 80s was like I can, bring home the bacon and, fry it up in a pan or whatever that commercial was. You were probably not even born yet. But, and it was true. Like women were kind of coming up. But like it was within my lifetime that women, were able to like have their own bank accounts, like without their husbands or their dads signing off on that. So it really hasn't been that long. So it was especially in a corporate business environment, I could have a director title, but if something needed to be copied, it was passed down the line to me to do. And so like it was kind of like navigating that thing too. So being on your own and not having to deal with that also, was advantageous for me, right? Because if you could do a good job and make people money, they don't really care, right? You're giving yourself the opportunity to do that. So when you work for yourself, I think what stops people is if they don't have clients lined up on the side, or if they don't have an income, right? That's the scary part, is because when you're working
Sure.
for somebody, that paycheck's coming in, right? Bi-weekly, monthly,
Yeah.
whatever. But when you start on your own, that's what's scary. So for people who want to do that, go out on their own and have these skills, because everybody does. Everybody has a skill. It doesn't have to be marketing or whatever, anything, right? Anything that you know how to do is valuable. Someone else wants to also learn how to do it, or you'll benefit another person from bringing that into the world. Do it on the side while you're still doing this other thing until you don't have to do that other thing anymore. I mean, that's pretty sage advice. It's been around for a really long time.
How did you get your first clients, and how do you get your new clients? Like what's changed over that, like since you went down that path?
Well, I mean, I've been doing it so long. I get a lot of referrals now. My clients just kind of refer me to the next person, and so that's also another benefit that I don't think is talked about a lot. I guess maybe it's not a good thing to say, hey, I don't really have to advertise, but it's true for like, I mean, I'm in a lot of circles. Being a solopreneur can be lonely, right? So it's important to, have a network and a connection that you regularly reach out to, or you can go a little loopy. And we all kind of are in that same boat, right? If you are consistently delivering results and doing a good job for people, they're going to tell their friends, right? So, and if you look at any of my social media, right, any of the things that I work very hard and do well for other people, it's not there, right? Like the cobbler's children have no shoes, right? This is the very first podcast I've ever done, right? And I do this for people all the time. So, so yeah, in the beginning, I charged an extremely fair rate and worked really, really hard to do great work for people, and just continue to do that. And so it was just an
Cool.
evolution of that. And so most of my work comes in through referrals. Sometimes I meet people at networking events or whatever, and meet them that way. But yeah, I don't really advertise anymore. I mean, occasionally I'm on LinkedIn when I have something I feel that's relevant to say. Yeah, I mean, part of my 2024 is breaking through that, because it's been kind of a personal thing for me to be small personally, right? Like I can be really big when it comes to talent and hard work and all of those things, because I prided myself on that. But putting my face out there and talking about things and all of that is took me a long time, almost like 50 years to get to be like, hey, you have important things to say, maybe somebody wants to listen to you. So you'll see more of me doing that for the sole benefit of providing value to other people in the future.
Do you think that's been inspired by you building other people's personal brand?
Yes, because I am literally telling people, hey, you have a good story to tell. There are people who want to hear, what you have to say. And I'm listening. I'm like, they're probably for each. I'm like, no, not me. Shh, work on this client right now. So yeah, definitely. I think that I have something to say. And I think the way information, um, you know, is transmitted, we need a change there too, right? Because I'm going to do this work for as long as I can, right? Until I'm literally shoved off the cliff and can't do it anymore. But I think teaching people, and this is a very respectable business model that I have benefited from, right? Where people build a huge audience by providing lots of valuable content, and then they release, digital products and things like that. Mad respect. I buy them regularly. That's how I've helped to grow and stay relevant in this industry. But I think that there's also space for people to just share, right? To just collectively share what it is that you know how to do with other people, and then have, that back and forth. I think, we need more community that's not focused on monetization necessarily, and more just, the sharing of talent and expertise. So that's like another thing that I'm working on. I'm kind of going on a tangent, but yeah, I think people sharing their personal stories inspires other people to be more authentic and more real. And particularly with personal brands, I know I'm kind of on a tangent, but I'm excited about how that's working out with my clients, right? Because women who've gone through layoffs or being pushed out of companies, like, they want to talk about it right away. Like, they want to get out there, talk about their message, and find other people that resonate with it. But I'm finding the men that I work with don't. They don't want to talk about that. And I'm sensitive about talking about demographics that I don't belong to. So, like, Derek, jump in and be like, hey, that's not, speak for all men, please, because you're the only man on
Pattern recognition is pattern recognition. So,
the,
what your observation is, push it out.
yeah, I mean, like, they want to talk, like they want to talk about what they're doing right now, or if they've overcome it, like that'll be part of their personal brand. But they don't want to say, like, I'm on my face right now. I've given, my entire life to this thing, and I'm like, what do I do now? And I'm trying to find. I think there are many people who are in that position who need a lighthouse, right? Like, somebody's got to step up and be the lighthouse. And maybe there are people who are doing that, and I just don't see them because I'm not in those spaces. But the women are more comfortable, and I don't know if it's because women are good at. I don't want to say good. Women are familiar with publicly navigating uncomfortable emotions, right? Like shame,
being more vulnerable,
security, right? Vulnerability. So, and maybe that's not so much the case. Maybe men don't have a safe space to do that. But I see it in the I see, like, especially as we move into authenticity, there is room for multiple lighthouses on for guys, doing this thing. So, I mean, like, Steve Jobs had a really great story, but it was a different story, right? Like, he got pushed out, but then they ran the company into the ground, and he went back and literally saved their asses, right? So that's like a hero story. So he was, sharing that from the rooftops. But I think that in between spaces, we need more of that, because it gives people hope to say, hey, me too, and what can we do about it, right? We got 6 people online with PhDs and a vast amount of experience. You all can get together and change the world, change how it's done, but you got to find each other to do that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. And in our pre-call, you had mentioned that was going to be a focus for you in 2024, is building that community, finding a way to create that space where you can have more people empowered and see how you can have people work together to amplify messages, amplify themselves, and grow. And I think that's great without the get on Gumroad and spend $75 a month for my course and I'll give you all the
Right.
secrets kind of clickbait.
Yeah. I mean, and then again, no shade, because a lot of people, that's their business model, and I've benefited greatly from that. There are a lot of huge influencers on LinkedIn who've had a really great run of doing those things. But I think part of what I do for free now, right, is connecting people. I've worked with this person doing their brand, and then I connect them together. And so I'm like, how do we do that en masse? And I think there actually needs to be more than just me, right? So if anybody's, like, hearing this and they're excited about the idea, like, let's put our heads together and figure out how to do this, and just for the betterment of everyone. So yeah, it's in its infancy. It's probably not going to be, like, launched out until definitely after the first of the year, because we're so close to the end of this year. But yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm refining.
That's exciting. I think we're going to be really excited to see it. And I think, the spaces are so full of grifters. People that sell courses, a lot of the times they're not practitioners. They haven't experienced it. They're collecting information, regurgitating it, and trying to cash a check versus being passionate about the topic that they're talking through or what they're trying to coach through. So when you have somebody who's differentiated in that space, it starts to attract a lot of positive talent and gives good impact. So we're really excited to see where that goes. So we touched on how you got into YDM or how you grew YDM. We talked through where you're going next, what your next battle plan is as you're going into 2024. It's weird to say that that's coming up already.
It's crazy.
And so yeah, what else is really exciting you? What are you looking at outside of your current projects, outside of AI? What's got you really interested where you see that there's opportunity here?
You know, this is when, like, if anyone's watching, they're probably gonna click off because I am so interested in people and like generations, and I feel like, we have like the latest iPhone, the latest computer, the TV, even nature, right? Like plants, trees, animals, birds, they all evolve, right? And they're viewed as an evolution and the next gen and better. And we don't always apply that same thought process to humans, right? Like the next generation, like, oh, those damn kids. So it's like, no, they're the evolved version of us, right? And so, I freaking love Gen Z. I think there's multiple, like there's two groups of it, like, but I love them, right? I think that they've got the compassion, the collective, the all the things that they're most adapted to where we are right now in 2023. And then I have a daughter who's an alpha, and I'm loving that coming up too, because they're going to be just literally changing the world. So I'm excited to see how all of that pans out. It's always been something that's interesting to me. Like I'm Gen Xer, right? So we're very, very small. We're like the smallest generation. And so obviously everybody talks about boomers, everybody talks about millennials because they're such a huge group. And I remember being in, corporate, and millennials were coming in, millennial women especially, right? And they were just the most badass ever, right? They would come in with just the confidence that I had to fake, right, for like 20 years, right, before they were just right out of school, like, this is what I know, this is what I'm worth. And, I was super, super impressed with that. So yeah, I'm excited about that, uncovering the nuances between how to communicate, not even really how to market to, right, because that sounds griftery or whatever, but how to communicate, like who these new people are that are coming up, and how they're going to change the world, and how I'm going to help brands do that, right? Be the marketing vehicle, like with their product or service, marketing to this amazing group of new gens coming up. So yeah, that's the crazy thoughts in my mind, and like why I love marketing so much.
I love that, because at the core, marketing is people. You can't have marketing without people and understand. I think you said your first class was like the psychology of
the
marketing. So
consumer,
maybe it
yeah,
was just that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's all
And
come full circle.
all about helping people, right? It's not, I mean, like, and there is like, their marketing has a kind of a sleazy side to it too, obviously, but really the true ethos of marketing is really to help people. Like you are connecting valuable products and services to the audience that they're going to benefit the most. And I love that. And there's so much like nuance that goes along with that. Like, it's the psychology of the person and the world and how it, what's happening in it and all of those things. And that's what's super, super interesting to me.
Sure.
We're all like
That's
pseudo
the same.
psychologists.
Yeah,
Too.
and when you put all the data layer over it, you're really clinical at that point.
Yeah.
It's test, iterate. It's what we do. We call hypothesis based problem solving. It's like literal scientific method applied to what we do all the time.
Yeah.
So covered a lot of ground. Really, really great story. And we have two questions that we typically like to wrap up on. And the first one is, what advice would you give yourself if you're 18 years old or 25 years old? You can sit down, have dinner with yourself. What advice do you give that version of you?
Mm, yeah, like at 18 to 25. Gosh, I didn't even like her, right? At 18 to 25. I didn't know it, but like I was so um worried about everyone's opinion. Like they're like my brand, I guess, like how people perceive me was more important than who I really was. So I think, well, I would tell her that everything that was important and valuable to her came to fruition. So like chill, like you don't have to be anxious every minute of your life. Like it's all good. And just to kind of, own this person that's on the inside, that she, even if there are some people who might think that you're a weirdo, you'll find the people who don't, or who are just weirdos like you too. And you'll have a much less tortured existence. Because I would say, and that's probably the case for many, right? The 20s were just like, who am I? What do I want to do? And then like the evolution of that for the rest of your life. So yeah, I would just kind of, take the edge off by letting her know, like, you're going to succeed in ways that you can't even imagine right now. And yeah, just don't like be comfortable with who you are at your core. You're all good. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's super relatable. And I appreciate the honesty, because I think there are so many people who feel that way when they're growing up. They're like, God, like, especially people like, I think you said like books were your friends. You were a bit of like, weren't like a cheerleader, popular girl, and neither was I growing up. And I feel like when you grow up in a society that really values those things, it's hard when we don't fit that mold. So,
and interestingly, I was a cheerleader. I was a co-captain of the cheerleader team.
You were a co-captain of the
The
cheerleader.
weirdest thing, because I was not cool, right? I went to my God, I have 30th reunion. I don't remember which reunion it was, but like nobody really even remembered me. And but I had like these popular things, because I was a kind of a sporty or whatever, so I was good at it. So I'd make the team, but I was like the least coolest person on the team. So there was like all of this. I went to a really small high school too, so that probably had a lot to do with it. But yeah, like yeah, it was like the weird dichotomy. You just said that, but yeah. So I had all.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Still the nerd. Like I'd be at practice where all like the girls were like so much cooler than I was, and like doing all the cool things, and I didn't even know what the cool things were, and I'm like reading a book, and so yeah, it's quite the dichotomy.
But I think it is really cool, because you took the things that you really like to do and the things that you were good at and made it into a career.
Yeah.
And now it's like you kind of went like you steered into it, as Derek would say.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think the last question we typically like to wrap up with is, what are you listening to? What books are you reading? What podcasts, or even music? What are you doing when you're not writing or designing websites or doing marketing strategy?
I am. Well, this is such a telling question, right? Because you can learn so much about by a person by asking, like, what do you listen to and what do you read? So I'm going to be authentic and vulnerable with all of my weirdness. But yep, fourth quarter, I always have a rule that I don't read anything educational. It's just because it's the end of the year, like I'm tired, right? So I just want to be entertained with my media outside of work. And so, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. Like I read all of his books. And so I think last year, maybe the year before, he released Fairy Tale, which was, I don't know if you're a fan of his, but it's kind of reminiscent of like Desperation, which he released like a long time ago. And then he released something, maybe it was September, called Holly. So I'm reading that book too, like just total fiction, kind of gorish, whatever. In that genre, I love that. So it was funny, Derek, during our interview or pre-interview for this, and it was always those questions like, if you could sit down with one person and have dinner, it's like the pressure of like saying the coolest thing ever, right? Because you want to come off as being like super cool, and I'm not. Like I'm just a nerd. And I think I said, I'd want to sit down with Edgar Allan Poe and have dinner with him, because he's kind of dark. I love the way that he writes, though. He's such an amazing poet, but like, is he a genius or is he a sociopath? Like, I kind of want to know, like maybe not even have dinner with him, maybe just be a fly on the wall so that I could super observe, with guards. So I didn't end up being behind a wall somewhere. So yeah, I'm reading, Stephen King, and I guess my music is super eclectic, because again, I'm all about the words, right? So like Noah Khan is like coming up. He's being popular, but I've been following him forever. The Six came out, and I don't know if you've seen it. If you're on TikTok, you've heard his music. But also like Taylor Swift, right? I'm going there. I'm like her oldest living fan. First of all, my daughter's so like she's dead into Taylor Swift. But I think when she was coming up, like I was kind of too old to like pay attention. But she has a way. She's a great writer, right? Taking complex emotions that we all can relate, at least women can relate to, and then putting them into words. You're like, yeah, I totally felt like that. That's exactly what that emotion felt like. And so I love that. I love having that with my daughter too, because I know, she's 12, but she's going to go through all of these things, right? And she has Taylor, because she don't listen to her mom, right? Because we kind of get discounted, like, you're my mom. Of course you're going to say, all these things, but she has that role model now to say, listen, this girl thought she wasn't going to make it through this, and she's Taylor freaking Swift, right? Like, look at what she's done with her life. So I love that. And I think, I mean, it would be ridiculous to say that she's underrated with the amount of popularity she has. But yeah, I don't think that people put enough emphasis on her writing ability. She can take, that's hard to do, to take complex, when you're in it too, to actually like write about it to that degree is pretty cool. So, and then like, I came up in the 90s. Like I love 80s. Like that music's coming back too. Like Tears for Fears, like Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Like that was like, I grew up on that song, but I love it. It's so poignant for today's time. And then like 90s R&B, I'm sure you guessed that one right off the
And so much 80s music is getting remixed into like modern songs that a lot of kids don't even realize were 80s songs, which is
yeah.
kind of fun to
Like when
see.
Barbie came out and that song that Ken sang, like I Want to Push You Around, like there were so many people that were like, that's an actual song. And I'm like, wow, I'm old. I remember I'm on TikTok all the time just because I love learning about the generation that, fuels that. And there was a girl who came on, she's like, back in the 90s, there was a concert called Lilith Fair. And
Oh my
I was
gosh.
there.
Oh my
Totally.
gosh.
So yeah, it's things just
It
kind of
doesn't seem like Lilith Fair and like Lollapalooza were that
we're
long
30 years
ago.
ago, right?
But
30
yeah,
years.
36 Chambers. So like Wu-Tang Clan's 36 Chambers album last week turned 30, and I was like,
Yeah.
yikes. That's
Really? Like, I think 30
tough.
years and I'm like 1970? Like I'm totally still there. So yeah. Yeah, I'm just getting older by me. I refuse. I mean, I'm gonna get older. I mean, the alternative sucks, right? So I don't want to not get older. But yeah, I'm gonna enjoy that process. It's kind of fun, being, in this space because like we're marketed to. I'm going to speak for women. Like we're marketed to, like you get a wrinkle and you're irrelevant, But then like you get the wrinkles and you realize I'm so not irrelevant at all, And
Right.
if anything, life is more interesting now than it ever was. And so yeah, like you kind of lose and I think this is for men and women too. We're just like not allowed to talk about it, which I think will be the next evolution in like beauty marketing or whatever, is to say like, hey, we don't need to be like virile and muscular and like perfect. Like we get to like eat the pasta and be interesting now. Like we've earned that, right? And that's what's like attractive and all those things, right? It's not the things of the 20s and 30s. So yeah, I'm on a tangent, but yeah, it's interesting.
No, I think it's true. I think it's like really just striving for health. It's not the aesthetics as you get older. It's like, oh, I want to like be around because I finally to your point, like myself and I'm comfortable in my own skin. And now's the time where I get to like really enjoy this part of my life. So just want to be around for it.
Be able to continue moving, right? Absolutely. It's functional for sure. Yeah.
Well, on that empowering note, I think we're at a good stopping point, which is really great. I think we had a really good conversation. It was amazing hearing what got you into marketing. Just a little, one sentence that changed your entire life.
Yeah.
Watching you get to the point of building YDM, working with great clients, getting great outcomes. And we're really excited to see what you do next with your next project. So keep us involved in that because we have some brainstorming we think we should be able to do there.
Yeah.
But Nancy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I'm going to obsess over the next like 6 years with every little thing that I got to go talk to my 18 to 25-year-old self right now. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. This was
in
fun.
2024, set a goal to do more of these, and then you'll have more things to obsess about.
Yeah.
What did I say on this podcast?
And we're honored to be the first.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Nancy.